Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Who else is in the room?
Dustin Ragland.
And Michael Trepanier.
This is awesome. I am glad to be in here in Dustin's studio, and I'm glad that I could get you two together for a short-ish period of time to talk about stuff. So I'm really excited about this.
Absolutely.
So, both of you can answer these questions, or one of you can answer the questions. I'm going to start with analog.
Sure.
Actually, kind of both. What is the difference? What are they?
As far as recording mediums, is that what you mean?
Yeah, analog and digital.
Okay, so analog would be the process of recording onto analog tape, or that's kind of it. Analog tape would be the biggest one at this point that's left over. A digital would be recording to any sort of digital medium, computers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the most basic explanation, you know.
But then, even though, since nowadays everything is done and recorded into digitally, except for some small exceptions, we still use analog equipment
Absolutely,
now.
yeah.
How's that work?
How does that work, Dustin?
How does that work? I mean, if you were thinking of a most common thing would be a microphone preamp, you're using a piece of equipment that it's not changing anything into ones and zeros at that point. It's still dealing just simply with voltage, with signal coming from the microphone to this piece of equipment that's using yet more electricity to bring the level up to a level that is comparable to every other microphone that's going to be out there, or comparable to where you can hear that because the output of the microphone is really quiet on its own. But in doing that, because of the wide variation of components you can have in a preamp and of what goes into the build of it, it imparts some sort of character to it. And that could be it dips high frequencies in a certain way, or it adds very, very subtle distortion or overdrive in a certain way. And all those things are what you kind of pay for and select when you have the different names and brands and logos, and topologies is a fancy word of how that stuff is laid out inside the preamp. And too, what kind of extra features you may want on the preamp to maybe take care of some of those things in the voltage realm. Some of this stuff, the goal, I guess, I don't know, the fun part in all of it is trying to both demystify, when a preamp sounds warm, is that really just because it's taking out some high frequencies as part of the natural limitations of what analog gear is? But we've realized that those limitations are actually assets to have, because when you heard the quote-unquote, higher fidelity digital signal, which is still going to be preamplified, then it's oh, maybe we don't want to hear all those that frequency band in that signal after all, or that's not as pleasing to our ears as we thought it might be when we thought, oh, we can hear, in theory, a wider range of frequencies. Turns out that not all those things were necessarily beneficial or musical in that way.
Yeah. All right, so starting with analog, what are the benefits of going an outboard EQ and an outboard preamp and all this junk, as opposed to just having it inside of your computer all nice and neat?
Well, again, kind of what you were saying, it's the imparting of something that it wasn't previously there. Sorry. So just in this room, by looking around, I know the listeners can't see it, but we've got a Yamaha console. So it's got the PM1000 channel strips, and those have a special sort of transformer in them, and that transformer, they call it the poor man's Neve, because it does similar things to what those Carnhill transformers did. And so it's imparting a certain amount of distortion. It's imparting kind of a push around the kind of the low mid frequency area. It's cutting off some of the high frequencies a little bit, but they just sound fantastic. And so you've got that. You've got this Chandler germanium preamp, which is similar. That's a clone of an early Neve as well. and it sounds fantastic, and it does that sort of thing. You got the Vox box, which is going to be a whole lot more clean. And that's the manly sort of thing. Their topology is very, very hi-fi and very clean sounding. What I think that's the majority of your mic. You have a bunch of them of the PM1000s. So you would select a certain preamp for its color, typically, as opposed to just going with, this is a clean mic amp, which is when you plug into your analog to digital converter as a mic amp, it's just clean.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really, they're not trying to spend the money to say, oh, this has got a Carnhill transformer or a UTC transformer or those things that can actually really bring, and it makes them heavy and all that stuff, and the power requirements are different and yada yada yada. So it's easy to make a very clean analog mic amp, which is what you're seeing inside those guys, but it's just different. So you select them for what they do. Your question was about mic amps and EQs and just any sort of outboard equipment. For me, outside of just the circuit path, and I don't know how you feel about this, Dustin, but for me, it's I'm a tactile person when I'm mixing. I don't want to mix with my eyes. I want to mix with my ears and my hands, and so I like grabbing the knob and twisting it.
Yeah.
And it's boring to me if I'm just like, and then I can come over here and I can click this thing, and then if I hold command, okay, now it's in fine mode, right? And it's just like, I don't want to think about the interface. I want to think about the sound. I want to be able to grab something, twist it, make the adjustment, move on, come back and go, oh no, it needs to be tweaked. I don't want to have to click through things, which that's really important to me.
Yeah,
I mean,
your
workflow may be different. I don't know.
The big key in all of that is the whole mixing with your ears and with your hands instead of just with your eyes. It is something I didn't realize for a long time, kind of starting out, really learning on digital gear only. And I had, typically you have parametric digital EQs, which map out your frequencies visually for you to the left or the low frequencies, to the right of the high frequencies. And you see via the interface, which is a brilliant interface, and not unlike a graphic EQ, which is a hardware piece, but one where you see the dips and cuts and the boost and gain that you have across the frequency spectrum. But after a while, you begin to mix things, or if you just started that as a habit, by what it looks like rather than what it sounds like. And there's still, obviously, you don't have the choice to not hear unless you're plugging your ears while you're mixing, which would be peculiar. But you're going to be listening to it, but it's a different method. And when I began to understand that is when I started to use even emulation EQs, digital EQs that are still modeled after hardware. So if it's like a Pultec style thing, there's just knobs. You don't have any kind of analyzer that's showing you the frequencies of what's coming in that particular sound or channel. And you don't have the map of frequencies. It's amazing when you take away just that layout, that landscape of like 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Right. And you don't see that. You just see knobs. And you've got to now make a decision in a different way. Your brain all of a sudden wakes up to that. And you're going, oh, wait, I'm doing this thing. And then take that another step to when you just have hardware. You have no LEDs. You have no necessarily on the hardware. You might. Nothing that's giving you visual feedback. And you're really having to both use your hands and use your ears, and the changes are far more subtle, so it trains your ear to notice those things. Like, it's not very obvious like what the germanium does at first, that preamp, when you have two different gains, and that's essentially it. There's a few other things, but it's just two different kinds of gain. Yeah. But the joy of it is figuring out that there's a lot that can happen with just gain, just the way that electronic signal or that voltage signal is fed into different pieces of it. Its name is literally the name of what makes one of the transistors in it, which is extremely nerdy, but it also shows you that this was a technology, and the technology's limit at the time, which was limited just because that's what the technology was. It wasn't like that they were necessarily thinking, oh, this sounds quote unquote vintage, because it was just that. That was what it was back in the day. But now at our place, we kind of realize we've seen so much growth in the components and things that are a lot cheaper that can provide gain for you, giving you the advantage of having an affordable digital interface. But the trade-off is, like Mike's saying, all of the heavier more specialized components just aren't a part of that because you have to make all these trade-offs in sound. So the visual paradigm is a huge thing, especially for young mixers. If you can constantly like remind yourself just to take breaks from looking at something and listen to it, turn your screen down or yeah, exactly. And you know, put up do something crazy like put up a video of like a forest in the background and then listen to the music with that on. Just do something to where you're not looking at levels on your meter or levels on your mixer, then you are having to listen to it in a different way, and it really does change the way it sounds. I think I maybe potentially it can be confusing for artists there, especially when they're doing vocals. I tend to turn away from the screen and kind of close my eyes and sit, and I'll probably fidget so that I'm not like getting sleepy or anything like that. But I always want to like make sure that people know I'm not like tripping out or something. I'm just like, I'm trying to listen without looking at it, especially in the early stages of tracking, to make sure that sonically things are there. And I'm not just like, oh yeah, things look like they're supposed to look. They're supposed to sound like they're supposed to sound versus look necessarily. But
and something else you touched on, you know, a lot of EQs have the graphic analyzer, or not, the frequency analyzer built in, and I hate that. And I think it's the worst possible thing that you can feed somebody who just says, "Oh, it's supposed to look like." It's not supposed to look like anything,
Right?
Yeah.
It's not, you know. And I have, as far as like the parametrics, where you can grab and change things, and you can see the curve. That's helpful. But I remember being early on just saying, no, a kick drum is supposed to, the EQ is supposed to look like this.
Yeah.
And so you would start building things, and sure, it's a great way to begin to learn what frequencies are important and which ones aren't. But it also goes back to that concept of, well, I can select this preset, and I can't tell you how quickly you need to get if people are listening who like to grab presets, you've got to stop.
Yeah.
You have to. Learn what those presets are telling you. And then, because the key of the song changes, you know, so this idea of like, oh no, we're going to boost 80 hertz here because that's what kick drums are supposed to sound like.
Right.
But 80 hertz has a note, you know, so if that's the wrong key, then all of a sudden you're making poor decisions. Like, and whether you know what note that is, there's calculators that can do that for you. I don't know what note it is off the top of my head. I could figure it out, but you do have to pay attention to that thing, because if you're and you can push harmonic values to make the chords sound differently, and that's cool. You know, but also just every source is different every time, you know, and even if you recorded it the same way for all the songs, it's different because the context in which it was recorded and how they play together is different. So, you know, and even like you said, moving over to analog modeled EQs where you have preset frequencies.
Yeah.
Right. So like think about an API 550 or something like that. You know, you can only select between, I think, 4 frequencies per band, and you got to make it work. And it's one of the best sounding EQs out there, just because it's limited, and that limitation is really important, I think, to understand. Having full feature is great, but sometimes that full feature just needs to be something simpler.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, it informs your workflow. And to me, it's all about workflow. So whether we're using analog or digital, I think it all comes back to the sense of, does this suit my workflow? And if it doesn't, that piece is gone. That plugin is gone. I don't even want to be around it.
Right.
But otherwise, yeah, that's a long way to answer that question. But yeah.
What are the limitations, or what makes it annoying to work with real knobs?
I don't have one. I can't. If you don't like what the piece of equipment is doing, you get rid of that piece of equipment.
Right.
It's not. Yeah, that's it for me. So I've bought compressors and EQs that don't fit the way I like to work, and I just sell them. It's not a big deal. You know, especially on the used market, if you bought it used, you can probably sell it for what you bought it. Especially if it's a good piece of equipment. If you're buying a $100 EQ, it's going to sound like a $100 EQ. You're going to get $50 for it, right?
Sure.
If you spend $500 on that vintage EQ, it's probably still worth $500 regardless. You know, so you try to buy the things that are good, and good, I think, is in quotation marks, and pretty, because it's relative, right?
Yeah.
And what is good to me may not be good to you, or may not be good to Dustin, because it suits the way that I like to work. I don't know.
No, I can't think of a limitation with knobs other than just the physical act of reaching around but even that, there's a side of it that reminds you, especially in days where it's a whole other kind of can of worms, but I think there is a mental thing that happens when you're clicking with a mouse or you're doing something that is also used for functions aside from music making. If you're sitting down to play guitar and you're forming your hands into the shape of chords and strumming and picking and all that kind of thing, that's something you typically only really do on guitar. And it makes you think, I'm playing guitar, even if it's just in your body, and your body's going to respond to that. And not even like in a mystical sense. It's really just physical. Like you are physically, your brain enters a state where you are now playing guitar and you're expecting melodic things to happen from the works of your hands in that case. Same thing with having physical analog gear. Even if it's just turning up gain on a preamp, your body is telling your mind, okay, you are performing this like engineering act, and it's not an accident to call it audio engineering. Like it's a form of engineering, so it makes you take it a little more seriously, or maybe not even more seriously, but it makes you pay attention to it in a way that this is the reason you stand up if you're feeling tired or something. You're just trying to get your body to get the blood flowing back in your mind in the right way, and there's a nice thing to have like that built into your actual workflow, even if it takes more setup on the end or recalls are different. All that kind of stuff is just like, well, that's fine. That's just part of it,
Yeah.
So,
If you get your result, the result you're expecting, if you set the bar of what you expect every time and know you're always working towards that, how you get there, I think is irrelevant. And if that's clicking on a mouse or having a laptop, that's great. I got no issues with that.
Yeah.
It's just how you feel like you can get the best sense of yourself and the best thing out of the project is really the only thing that matters.
Yeah. What do you wish that new engineers and producers and stuff knew about analog gear?
That's a really good question. I don't know about it. That it exists and and that it's not as expensive as you think, but it's considerably more expensive than a plug-in.
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
that's a great question. One is that again, that physical act is actually a value. That's part of the value of paying for it in a lot of ways, even though that can feel painful. That's why people pay for, like maybe a MIDI fader controller.
Right.
Is just because the act of moving that fader with your hand still we're left with the paradigm that we inherited from early mixing stage. If it was, if most mixers, we tend to think of like a slider type fader, but obviously a lot of mixers, universal audio mixers have knobs instead of faders, And so, but those paradigms that we start off with, that was just what we physically had. And that still mentally to us kind of gives us a different act. And that's a part of the value of analog gear, even if you're starting out with it. I'm trying to think of what would be good for. One is that it really does help teach you gain staging too in a lot of ways, and that's something that in the digital realm can be quickly overlooked. Of like because your gain staging is very forgiving in your summing engine, and you've got such crazy headroom that you're just pulling faders up all day long, but your master fader is still has a lot of clipping, and that's still a number one. Not pet peeve, but a thing that I try to quantify as a evaluation when I'm working with audio students is your master output clipping? If it is, that's imparting things to your sound that under all but the most extreme circumstances you don't want, and it's just incorrect. Like there are few things in audio that are like, this is right, this is wrong, but that is wrong, and it's
clipping your master
output, and it's not a hard thing to change. It just takes habits, and so having analog gear in the front end helps you to build those habits because you may or may not have an output gain control on a microphone preamp, for example. That means you've really got to pay attention to what's happening. But the cool thing is a chain of events occurs if you're paying attention to, let's say, the simplest interface microphone pre. So on your interface, you've got a gain knob, and you're trying to work with the vocalist that's sitting in the next room, and he or she is singing pretty quietly, so you crank that gain up pretty far, but then all of a sudden something kicks in, and and it's just, in your ears. So you've got to either dynamically move that gain, or you're paying attention to the song, and the song has this dynamic part that, okay, maybe we need to change our process and cut it at two different times or two different settings, or maybe this doesn't even work in the context of the song. We've got to work with rearranging the song itself. And all it was just a simple knob, but it drove you into thinking about the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even kind of talking about like the PM1000, you know, having your input gain different from your output gain are just totally different things. The fact that you could drive the preamp and then back out on the what would be your fader, you know, but your direct output is assigned to, I believe, one of your echo sends, right? So you can really slam the transformer and get the color out of that and then back it off. Again, gain staging and learning how to use the color of the microphone and the color of the mic amp and those things. And yeah, like you said, it comes down to a simple twist of a knob can inform so much about what the song's doing. Or like, hey, I need to have an analog compressor, or like this part's right, and I need to be able to track with compression or with EQ in order to achieve what the artistic vision of this particular part is. And there's certain products you can do that with. You look at all the universal audio stuff, and as far as UAD and what's going on, that's really cool technology. And they do a really great job with their plugins. And the fact that you can also process in real time with the DSP is fantastic. And their modeling is pretty stellar. So having those sorts of things, maybe that begins to inform everything.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and then not just turning it up to where it's like, oh, it's almost clipping. I guess that's loud enough. It's like, well, no, it's definitely loud enough. Yeah.
Switching over to the digital side, what are the benefits of using digital stuff?
Recall.
Yeah. I mean, recall is a big thing. Automation.
Absolutely.
You know, the complexity of automation. I mean, and you know, sonically, it is technically you get a whole lot more signal to noise ratio. Not a whole lot more, but you get a pretty decent amount of signal to noise. The noise is, especially in 64-bit systems, really, really, really low. Again, some of those things they're theoretical limits that don't practically matter to us. Like to have 384 decibels of signal to noise ratio doesn't really mean much for a human who has around 135 decibels of signal to noise, you know, before we're just clawing our ears out. And so there's a side of that in the digital realm that's helpful, and it can be helpful for massive summing projects of putting much audio together, but it's still not something that we're going to use all that range because we're limited, we're band limited or amplitude limited ourselves as humans. But the editing thing, honestly, maybe is the most obvious and like helpful digital thing. Is
non-linear aspect of it.
Yeah, there's the moving audio around. You know, makes for just different kinds of music that probably couldn't have existed, or would be extremely limited to those who could afford the time and the money of a lot of tape and a lot of cutting and splicing. Because people have made those kind of things for a long time off of amazingly, quote unquote, you know, obsolete kind of technologies, but to be able to do that digitally and the way that time stretching and compression works with things just makes completely different timbres of music possible, which is really fun.
Something about, like, I mean, you're obviously an Ableton guy, and so like I learned a lot of music making through Ableton, and that having a digital interface that almost feels tactile.
Sure.
In the sense that, like, digital on its own doesn't necessarily, like, do everything for you. Like, they have to do the work to make it work for you. But the steps that they've been taking to make digital feel more real has been very beneficial to me as a musician and as a producer to be able to work with something that feels musical.
Yeah.
Things that you could touch.
Yeah.
Like the push. The push is a great example, and this is something I've been learning from Dustin in the last couple of weeks. I just bought a push, and it's informing a lot of creative decisions, a lot of workflow things. But even outside of the instrument side of things, you've got like soft tube console one, where that the whole channel strip is right there, and you can just kind of click through the channels, and
Right.
the interface of it is brilliant, and it kind of gets you thinking in that. If I go to this channel, there's the EQ, there's the compressor, it's all built
Yeah.
in, right? And that's beautiful. And even like the Pro Tools PT Control app, free for your iPad. If you're an iOS user, I don't think they have Android versions yet, but it's genius. I absolutely love it. And it was one of those. Like, I just want faders. And
Right.
granted, they're not actual faders, but I've got an iPad, and I
Sure.
can actually sit down, and it's increased my workflow. I mean, I can't tell you how much. There's been a couple pieces of equipment I've bought in the last 6 months that have completely changed the way I work, and that one started about a year ago of me like really playing with it, and then I'm automating with the mouse less and less and less and less and less, and it's really important to me now. So when I get to that point, I literally I don't look at the screen. I look at my iPad and I move everything away from me, and I just sit there with my eyes closed and I work. And I can bang through a mix in half the time, as far as automation is concerned. So I can do an initial pass of automation in an hour, and revise and resolve that in 3, to the point where I'm like, I feel really good about this.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have been possible without a Wi-Fi connection that's talking to my DAW outside of owning, a large frame console where I can actually pull out 60 channels and then running another, and doing automation in analog is brilliant, but at the same time, it's also complex.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To me, this speaks to the nature of them combining, because one informs the other. The great thing about digital is it's taking everything we know about analog and expanding it to the point that analog couldn't have gone, because there's
Sure.
just physical limitations of the devices. And then the analog people are seeing what the digital guys are doing, and then trying to create in that realm as well.
Yeah.
And then how they mix together, like I'm thinking like hardware inserts. It's things that if you don't have analog equipment, hardware inserts aren't something you use.
Sure.
But I can't live without a hardware insert, because I need to be able to put that compressor on this channel.
Yeah.
And then when I push the automation, I'm actually automating post that particular insert. So, I'm not automating into the compressor. I'm automating what the compressor is already doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, those sorts of things, this is where that marriage becomes really, really important. I know there's other engineers and producers out there who just shit talk one side or the other of this
Yeah.
argument, and I have no patience for that, because one is not better than the other. They are different, and if you learn to use them both for what they are, then all of a sudden you have something that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
But it gets expensive at that point.
Yeah. Well, and it's good to have moved on from like the early days, and some of this is just informed by like more popular media than it was in engineering world, where there's A/B tests of what sounds better, which just the term "better" is an incredibly difficult thing to lay out. But you're trying to A/B blind test. This was recorded on tape, this was recorded straight to hard disk or whatever, and those kind of things. That was never really ever going to be the relevant outcome from these two worlds. It was always going to be, well, do you get more out of this particular microphone because you're using it with this particular analog preamp? That's going to go down to hard disk, or do you get something out of this particular piece of hardware you can use as an insert? You have this old analog tape delay or something you want to put in there, or an analog EQ that does things that as part of a workflow, and that's maybe the best way to think about it, is Mike was saying, it's a flow of work, and you're meant to stay in that flow and not be interrupted by either cycling through gazillion presets, or, well, I've got 17 Neve model EQs that I've got cracked from waves or whatever, and I'm going to try all of them on this track. It's rather that you go, no, here's the sound I'm looking for here. I know, and this piece of gear does that thing. It does a few other things too, but because it's limited, you know that it's going to do what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And it's what you're looking for, and you stay in a flow. You're not just wasting time or clicking through things all the time. So I don't know that. And there's a good humility. I I hope that's still in digital world of like that a digital converter, an analog digital converter, and digital to analog converter are analog pieces of gear technically because they are
Sure.
components that still require electricity to run, and they still require logic gates and shark chips and FPGAs and all the kind of stuff that are part of the physical layout of it. And that's why things like clocks are in there and all that kind of stuff. It's still requires voltage and signal to actually operate and run, and so there's still a humility inside of that. But then once it gets inside its ones and zero realm, the amount that you can do without necessarily reducing fidelity by overdubs or whatever, it's pretty fun, pretty wild, and the visual element, of course, too.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd say is you got people who, like Andrew Sheps, for instance, he's like, I'm just mixing on a laptop now. And he sold his millions and millions and millions of dollars of equipment. and there's something to what he's saying in the sense that, when I'm doing analog to digital conversion for a hardware insert, that's where the loss is. I'm like, yeah, we understand that. That's a process of going from ones to zeros, back to voltage, and then taking that voltage and going back to ones and zeros.
Yeah.
Loss is going to happen. It's a transducer. This is what happens. We can't do anything perfectly. But to me, it's all workflow. It's 100% workflow. I will take the loss.
Yeah.
Every single time if it means that the end result is ultimately better for my workflow and for the outcome of the project. Because let's be honest about what people are listening to.
Yeah.
Okay, so this whole concept of, like you're saying, blind testing.
Yeah.
Does this sound better? It's like, well, at a streaming bit rate, you can't tell. You can't. And, or people are just MP3s all day long, and that's fine. I'm not bashing that. Let's just be clear. But it's the world we live in. So fidelity matters to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The consumer could care less. I think. I may be wrong there. I hope I'm wrong, consumers. But you got to prove it. You got to be willing to buy records. You got to be willing to do those things. So
Yeah. What do you think the future holds for both digital and analog and sort of the synthesis?
Man.
Futurism. I think the future is probably ultimately going to be digital as we move forward. That hurts my heart. But the technology has gotten really good. I mean, I will keep leaning on UAD in this particular discussion because the things they are doing are unreal. And the analog modeling they're doing is very, very good. I like to think that in the future, when we're mixing, it'll just be, like, oh, I'd like to use this microphone with this sort of tube in it, with this sort of transformer, and you can just start doing that.
Yeah.
Of course, I also think
You're also describing Stephen Slate.
I hope not. But just in this grand scheme of things, I guess I am.
That might be the Raven or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the Raven's just a touch interface.
Oh wait, no, that's right. Yeah, I don't think
But
it's
yeah,
the
he does have this is a bike model, and
Yeah,
no,
that's
but I mean, just thinking about if I have this EQ, I could actually say, we've modeled these different things and be able to
Right.
put them in there. But at the same time, that's a rabbit hole, so I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, digital mixing to me is a rabbit hole if you don't know how to actually define your workflow. And so, I'm trying not to go off the rails here, but I think the future ultimately is digital, only because there's a few of us left who really still truly love analog. And that number, I think, is slightly diminishing just because the availability of product. But at the same time, just because you bought an interface doesn't mean you're a recordist or
Sure.
a producer or have the right to call yourself those things. You can be an enthusiast. You can be someone who likes to write music and do those things. But just like anybody who has Photoshop is now a photo editor, or I cracked this thing and now I'm that, and that's not true. So I don't know how much of our business will be informed by those people. trends keep moving around, and I don't know. For me, it's wide open, and I have no idea what the future is, and I think that's exciting.
Yeah.
And if so long as you have good ears, you can roll with the punches. Styles change. I mean, 20 years ago, what did production sound like? You know, I guess God, that's the 90s now.
Yeah. 20 years ago, if we go further back, you don't get to like gated reverb or too much, but
right, and that's coming back.
Yeah,
you know, so
totally.
it's all a cycle, and so it's just going to keep changing, and the technology and hopefully with future generations, it just keeps getting better and better and better. Whether that's analog or digital, I don't think it really matters. You know, have good ears.
Yeah.
The rest will fix itself.
Yeah, I mean, I and trying to think through an answer, like part of it is like what you were showing me, Mike, earlier with your phone is able to via Wi-Fi transmit a sync signal.
The link thing from Ableton.
Yeah, exactly.
That blew my mind. That hurt. I mean, I had been spending literally a month with my modular trying to get it to sync correctly to Ableton.
Yeah, and that's, you know, it's using a smartphone in a way that is not.
It's not intended, but it's totally perfect. I don't know. Have you played with Link?
I haven't.
Okay, it's genius.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Basically, it's up in the top left-hand corner of Ableton. You just press Link. I downloaded a free app. Sorry, this is going to sound really pluggy, but I don't give a shit because it's cool. It's called Sync Control from Korg, and it sends via Wi-Fi time code basically, and then this here, press Link. We're in Ableton right now. If you press Link, it's
One link.
I'm linked.
Popped up, yeah.
Now it's sending the time code. So now we're at 93 BPM. I mean, we're recording audio, but it doesn't make any difference. But it's spitting out 93 BPM. So out of my headphone jack, it's just spitting square wave quarter note information. Or maybe eighth note. I have to double check. But that's it. And so now I can hook my modular up without even having to think about it. And eighth note. It's spitting out eighth note. And you can change the subdivision. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
How cool is that? How cool is that?
I mean, I think initially, too, when I got my first iPhone, I remember thinking, I'm going to get all these synthesizers and make all this music on this thing. And it was a little bit of a letdown, partially just because the physical interface is so tiny. And back then, they were even tinier. And it's just, there's parts of it that were just not practical for me, or I have too big fingers or whatever. But for me, it just didn't latch on. For some people, they've made... I mean, who's the producer that worked on Kendrick Lamar's newest record that made half of his stuff on GarageBand on his phone? And I've worked with other artists, especially artists that do sample-based music or hip-hop type things, that have done stuff with GarageBand on iPhone that are actually really, really compelling and good, like interesting music and deep music from that. But for me, the promise was never really there. But then I experienced something like that, and that solves a very obscure problem super easily. It's with something you already have with you. And that's maybe the fun thing with digital, the world, is that it may be hard to go back because of the ease of storage and the cost of things and the fidelity and all the editing just styles you get used to.
Yeah.
But there's also always going to be, I mean, people still pay a lot of money for extremely hi-fi analog record playing systems, Right. And
Absolutely.
there's always going to be that world. It depends on how much of that is in the mainstream of production or not. Who knows, but...
Well, even in this kind of not necessarily a sidebar, but think about the sort of converters you're going to be buying. And the technology that's changing there. Like Burl converters, for instance.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Have freaking transformers in line. And you cannot, I don't know if you guys have ever heard a Burl converter, but it's one of those you're like, oh, this sounds good, and then you take the same thing, because you just split it from the source and record it on two different platforms, and the Burl... it beats it up, like not in a nice way. It's just one of those like, okay, so how can I afford this? It's one of those. And even talking with our buddy Bryce, who works over at the music group here in Oklahoma, they bought a Burl system and they were mixing on it, and one of the cards went down, so they had to send it back. But that didn't give them enough outputs to finish mixing the record. They stopped. because they put in another like 192 or HDIO Avid product, which is a good converter. I'm not shit talking those. I'm not shit talking the HDIO because I think it's a legitimately good converter. The Burl beat it up so bad that they had to stop working until it came back, because it imparted so much into not just the creative vision but the sonic vision they were trying to sculpt, and you couldn't do it any other way. than having those particular converters. And I've never heard that story been told about any other converter. You know, there's other ones that are good. The ACI is fantastic. The Apogee Ensemble is fantastic. All the there's just so many.
Yeah.
The Prism stuff is fantastic, but it's just crazy. So where it's going, it's all going to just keep growing together. I think it has to.
Yeah. I think that there's so much money being spent trying to recreate this tactile feeling. That's and that whenever you get a push and you can just not look at the screen or not use a mouse and just use that, or whenever you have your iPad and you use your faders instead of having to click around with your mouse. I think that digital is going to allow us to be able to use DAWs more like instruments.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like whenever anything that just takes way too long in a DAW, I think the interface will get better, but also just like how we use it in a physical manner will also change.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as I don't know, and the professionals go back and reinform that decision every day. If it's a crappy thing, we're going to complain about it.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to tighten it up. They're going to make it better. The people who are working with the applications. You know, you can't stop an individual's workflow from being spastic and crazy, but you know, the more that you work, the better your workflow gets, and the more that these things that we're talking about, whether it be digital or analog, begin to inform the outcome. And I think, like I said, it's not better or worse. This is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both good. So,
I guess lastly, I sort of asked you this on the last one, but I haven't had you on a second one. What have you guys been listening to or watching or whatever that you want people to hear about?
I had to think about it. So
No, I'm trying to think. Gosh.
you got me into that Lotom record.
Yeah. This band Lotom, Lotom. David Bazan, who's a well-known songwriter from Pedro the Lion and his own solo things. Teamed up with Trey Manny, who was in His Name Is Alive.
T.W. Walsh plays.
T.W. Walsh
was
in it.
the drummer for the other half of
Yeah,
Pedro.
he was Pedro Bazan for a while, and he's a great songwriter of his own, a mastering engineer. And then Jason Martin from Starflight 59, shoegaze, big, just super widescreen rock and roll legends. That record I've just started to really get to listen to, and it's refreshing rock record. Like when you work in technology and you work in all different styles of music, there's still parts of like your DNA you don't get to choose as much. It's just kind of the scenes you grew up in, and that's a lot of the world that I grew up in. Those guys were literally part of that world when I was 15, 16 years old. So there's that musical side that's like, oh, guitar rock. Okay, I'm just not going to complicate this love. Like I'm not looking for it to be anything crazier than that. But there's also like a time thing. Like these guys are in their 40s making music and vital things, and like I want to be in my 40s making music and vital things, and so on and so on. I've been listening a lot to a band called Hooray for Earth. It was a New York band. They've been broken up for probably 4 or 5 years now, something like that. But their second full length, I think it's their second full length, it's called Racy, R-A-C-Y, has really been just kind of slow burn that like gets under your skin really slowly, but then all of a sudden you notice you're boiling and you're like, oh my gosh, this is great. So listening a lot to that, like noisy electropop thing.
Nice.
If somebody put it, if Elliott Smith played shoegaze with some electronic elements, that's kind of what it reminds me of. So
That's awesome. I'll have to check that out.
yeah.
I've been listening to Land to Talk, their new record, a lot.
Yeah, I love Land to Talk.
I loved that first record they put out, and it really hit me in a spot. I think Justin Vernon from Bon Iver produced that first one, and it sounded kind of terrible in the right way. And then they did another record that it was good, but it didn't hit me in the same way. And this one is kind of more of a return to form. It's called Life After Youth. The new national stuff that's out, the 2 songs I'm absolutely in love with. Super excited about that. The new Jason Isbell is really good. It's really, really good. Let's see what else. Will Stratton, that new record, Rosewood Almanac, is beautiful and brilliant and all that. I've been digging back into Jesus and Mary Chain. And that's been really fun.
Just the other night, apropos nothing, just kind of funny you mentioned that the bassist from Jimmy Eat World posted a little short Instagram clip of an interview with JAMC where the bassist, they're all like kind of already blissed out of their minds. They all have like beers in hand, and he's like, the interviewer's asking the bassist kind of incredulously like why he only has 2 strings on his bass at the time, and he's like, well, I only use these 2, and like I want to go spend money on 2 other strings. That's all I need. And the other guys are like, that's all he knows how to play. And it was just kind of funny, like, this little moment of Jesus and Mary Chain. Yeah,
they're fantastic. I mean, and listening to that and being like, oh, okay, I see where all of that like Britpop from the '90s stuff like really kind of was informed by and with all at the same time. It's kind of it's really cool. And they have a new record, and it's fantastic. Cool. The Blue Nile. I don't know if we talked about the Blue Nile.
Can't remember. It sounds familiar.
A record called Hats. George Lang told my buddy Chase about this record, and I think I've played it for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or you already knew about it, or something.
No. I've now become a true believer in the.
Oh my God! It's and that ruined me for the longest time because I'm like, this explains so many bands, and nobody knows about this band. So like the 80s, I think.
Well, I feel like the band, a lot of music that's being made right now, artists that persist and they mature will sound like the Blue Nile when they're more mature.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the best way to describe it.
Sure. And even listening to the American football.
And
being like, oh, I know where you copped your guitar style now. And he's a great guitar player, but it's funny to listen to that and go, I got it. I'm trying to think of other things I've been listening to. There's been a lot, but those are probably the biggest ones. And the new series of Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, Revisionist History. I don't know if you guys.
I haven't yet, but it's one of those things that so many people that I'm like, okay, I take you seriously in this. I've said that, and so
the first series was brilliant, and then the second series is. I think we're 6 or so episodes in, and it's unbelievably cool. You guys would love it. Yeah. It's very, it's thinky, and whether you like his point of view or not, it still makes you think about what's going on.
Yeah, cool.
Brilliant, cool. Brilliant. I love that guy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I get like really stuck on stuff. Like rather than listen to a whole bunch of things at the same time, I just like listen to one album for like a month, and so I just like
until it's played out.
Yeah.
You've absorbed it.
And so I've still been stuck on Everything, and Clipping.
Yeah.
And Sunlux.
Yeah. That Sunlux record is really good.
So, I mean, I've just been, like, stuck in these few things. I've been, like, kind of having Survive on in the background.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I've just been, like, stuck on just those things. And then, like... been still listening to Waking Up with Sam Harris. That podcast is really good. But yeah, thank you guys for doing this with me.
Absolutely.
Again, I greatly appreciate and admire you guys, so I'm glad to be able to do this with you guys.
No, thanks. Thanks for making thoughtful conversation such a part of your life too. So welcoming us to it.
Absolutely.
I'm Santiago Ramones. Dustin Ragland, Michael Trepanier. I make music. Right. Just plug your things first.
Oh, wait, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, I make music as Young Weather sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really make that much music. I help other people with their music. Yeah.
You're working on it, though.
I'm working on it. I have a bunch of ideas in the back burner.
Where can we find your things?
You can't find my things.
Well, no, I mean, like, not your music particularly, but just the stuff that you do.
Probably my website. Cool. So it's just michaeltrepanier.com. Try spelling that. That's me.
Cool. Again, I'm Santiago Ramones. I make music. You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I have finished mixing my EP, and it's to the point where I've just I'm done. I need to just put it out. But and so that will be out at some point as soon as I get album artwork for it. And so maybe I'm going to put out a single first. But that will be found on my website, santiagoramones.com. I always end my podcast with my three things, which are love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.
Sweet.
Yeah.